Givat Chaviva, the director for many years was Stanley Ringler, who was a very close friend of Rabbi Noble's. And so, yes, and so whenever Rabbi Noble was in Israel, he would spend time at Givat Chaviva, and then I did as well. And then during one of my visits, you know, the students kept inviting me to come to different kinds of programs, and I went into the dining hall one day, and I happened to sit down and have lunch with Mohammad Darawshe, and learned about the work that he has been doing for his entire career. And so I'm going to give you introduction of all of this distinguished and important work that Mohammad does. Not only is he the director of Planning, Equality, and Shared Society at Givat Chaviva, and he'll talk more about Givat Chaviva and what Givat Chaviva does. He's also a Shalom Hartman Institute faculty member. Unfortunately, I didn't get to study with him last summer when I was there at the Hartman Institute, but he and I have already planned a conversation with some of the faculty when I go back in January. He previously served as co-director of the Abraham Fund Initiatives and as elections campaign manager for the Democratic Arab Party and later the United Arab List. Mohammad Darawshe is considered a leading expert on Jewish-Arab relations and has presented lectures and papers at the European Parliament, NATO, Defense College, World Economic Forum, and Club de Madrid, US Congress, Herzliya Conference, and Israel's Presidential Conference. He was the recipient of the Peacemakers Award from the Catholic Theological Union and the Peace and Security Award of the World Association of NGOs and was Leadership Fellow at the New Israel Fund. In 2008, Mohammad Darawshe was elected as a city council member in his hometown Iksal. In 2009, he served as a member of the National Committee, which drafted Israel's coexistence educational policy. He holds a Bachelor of Arts from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem and a Master of Arts in Public Administration from Hartford University. He lives in Iksal with his wife and 4 children who we got to hear a lot about them. They're all in their 20s and doing amazing work. And the title for our talk today is The Palestinian Citizens in Israel in Times of Crisis. Thank you, Mohammad. We're delighted to have you here.
Givat Chaviva is the largest and oldest Jewish-Arab shared society organization in Israel. Our 37-acre campus has classrooms, guest rooms, a dining hall, and a boarding school.
זה מקום שמתאים את עצמו למשימה שנקראת חברה משותפת. בכדי שהעיסוק בחינוך לשלום ודמוקרטיה וערכי זכויות האדם יהפכו להיות יותר מקצועיים עם תוצאות יותר איכותיות ויותר טובות.
In our work to promote shared society, we focus on education, culture, and language. Unfortunately, there are strong forces working against us, sparking conflict and advocating for inequality. We have faced crises in the past when tensions between Jews and Arabs were at their highest. Yet, after periods of violent incidents, we have seen revived interest in education for shared society.
דוח מבקר המדינה ב-2021 הראה שרק 1% מבוגרי מערכת החינוך במדינת ישראל, אם זה ערבים או יהודים, זוכים למפגש עם האחר, וזה מה שאנחנו מנסים לקדם בעצם בגבעת חביבה במשך 60 שנים האחרונות.
After the May 2021 events, we received 4 times more requests than usual for Jewish and Arab encounters. Principals, teachers, and parents became interested in giving their children shared education for democracy.
המרכז היהודי הערבי לשלום מגבעת חביבה הוא המרכז הראשון מסוגו שבאמת חרת על דגלו חינוך לשלום. אנחנו יודעים לעשות את העבודה הכי מקצועי שיש, כי אנחנו מסתכלים על עצמנו בעיקר כגוף שהוא מוביל את התחום, וככזה צריך כל הזמן להתמקצע.
זה מקום שמאפשר לכל בן אדם באשר הוא לדבר ולספר את הכאבים שלך ואת המכאובים שלך, ואם אתה פלסטיני ואם אתה יהודי חרדי אגב, זה נותן לגיטימציה, הם לא מפחדים לדבר, כי זה גבעת חביבה.
For us, students' encounters are not enough. We create meaningful encounters between students and teachers. תוכנית שפה משותפת זה בעצם תוכנית שמביאה מורים ומורות יהודיות ויהודים אל בתי ספר ערבים כדי ללמד עברית מדוברת.
זה ליצור מרחב מפגש דרך מורה יהודי שנכנס לכיתה ערבית, ובדרך כלל הוא היהודי הראשון שהילדים נפגשים איתו. היום הפרויקט הזה עובד בכמעט 50% מחטיבות הביניים הערביות.
צריך להיות מאוד מאוד יצירתי כל הזמן כדי לא לאבד אותם, ולזכור גם שזה תרבות אחרת.
אני מקנאה בהם, כי בזמני זה לא היה, ואני מחזיקה עליהם אצבעות שבאמת ילמדו ויענו.
In Israeli arts and culture, the work of Arab artists is underrepresented. At Givat Chaviva's Shared Arts Center, we provide an equal opportunity for Arab artists to share their work.
המרכז המשותף לאומנות הוא מרכז שעוסק בקידום חיים משותפים דרך אומנות, בחינוך לאומנות, והאתגר הגדול והמרתק כאחד הוא איך להציג אומנות איכותית, מעניינת, בועטת, עכשווית, שמדברת את המשותף, היכולת לשתף פעולה, כחברה משותפת.
זה הזדמנות להראות לאנשים שיש מקום שהוא קולט את הדברים בצורה הוגנת.
In Israel, all children attend the same education system. Still, they are almost completely segregated within the system according to religion and ethnic origin. We at Givat Chaviva believe that education is one of the main ways to move towards an equal shared society. That's why we decided to present the public education system with a successful model for a shared high school.
בית הספר הבינלאומי הוא גשר. אנחנו חלק מקבוצה קטנה, הייתי אומר אפילו משפחה קטנה של מוסדות חינוך, שזה הדגל שלהם, לחנך ביחד. במקרה שלנו יחד זה בעיקר בין יהודים וערבים. בתוך הקבוצות האלה מגיעים תלמידים ותלמידות מכל רחבי המדינה, ואליה אנחנו מביאים גם תלמידים בינלאומיים. הם כל כך דומים זה לזה. אחרי כמה חודשים, אתה כבר לא זוכר מי מגיע מאיפה, ויש לנו 200 בוגרים, ואנחנו נמצאים איתם בקשר כל הזמן, ואנחנו רואים איך החוויה הזאת יצרה אצלם תמורה אדירה.
We don't go to school together, we don't live together, and we don't meet each other. So it's no surprise that the absolute majority of Jews are unable to communicate in Arabic. Givat Chaviva's Institute for Arabic Studies is celebrating its 60th anniversary. It was the first place to offer spoken Arabic studies in Israel.
מכון ללימודי ערבית מלמד יהודים ערבית.
אנחנו פה מלמדים את התרבות, את ההיסטוריה של העם.
כדי להידבר עם האחר, להכיר את האחר.
בן אדם שיודע על האחר יכול להגיע לשביל הזהב ולמשותף.
שבבוא היום, אחרי הרבה שנים, יסתכלו על זה לאחורה ויגידו, ככה יוצרים חברה משותפת.
Everyone talks about the high-tech world as the gateway to Israeli society. Many are trying to bring Arab society into high-tech. We found that by providing Arab students equal exposure to the world of high-tech, we can make this gateway accessible.
برنامج برعم الهايتك باعتقادي مهم جدا للوسط العربي، كونه بهيئ الطلاب بجيل صغير للحصول على لقب أول بمجال منه بنخرطه في مجال الهايتك بالبلاد. بالإضافة إلى ذلك الطلاب عندنا كمان بأخذوا تقوية في اللغة العبرية.
It's just a very good opportunity that not everyone gets.
أكثر نجاح حسب رأيي حققناه في برنامج برعم الهايتك هو جميع الخريجين اليوم بيشتغلوا في عالم الهايتك.
The crisis of crime and violence in Arab society is one of the major difficulties facing Arab authorities. This stems from inequality in budgeting and lack of law enforcement during the last 75 years.
יש לנו את מרכזי הגישור שבעצם עובדים בתוך החברה הערבית, וזה מה שאנחנו מנסים לפתח בשנים האחרונות.
יש לנו כוונות טובות שצריך לתרגם אותם לפעילות, לפרויקטים, לאקשן, להכשיר את האנשים בשטח שיכולים לטפל בבעיות.
האזור שאנחנו נמצאים בו של ואדי ערה הוא אזור מיוחד במינו, ולא רק בגלל שיש לו מספר תושבים יהודים וערבים כמעט זה.
אם אנחנו עומדים בגבעת חביבה על מגדל המים, אנחנו מסתכלים מזרחה, חריש במרחק נגיעה. אנחנו מסתכלים דרומה, באקה אל גרבייה במרחק נגיעה. אנחנו מסתכלים מערבה, פרדס חנה וכרכור במרחק נגיעה. מסתכלים צפונה, ואדי ערה במרחק נגיעה. יש פה עושר תרבותי בלתי רגיל. כל יום לומדים משהו חדש.
מין מקום שבעצם אפשר לראות שאפשר אחרת.
זה מייצר כל הזמן הזדמנויות, זה כל הזמן מייצר גירויים לחשיבה, גירויים ללמידה והבנה.
ילד שעובר חוויה כזאת הופך להיות בן אדם יותר טוב, אזרח יותר טוב, אזרח שיכול להכיל במרחב שלו את נוכחותו הלגיטימית של הצד השני.
We know one thing for sure. The future for all of us here will be shared. In order for Israel to continue to be a democracy and to prosper, we, Jews and Arabs, will have to live together and lead it together. We promote shared society on the field by our daily work and influence decision makers to invest in shared education, in empowering the Arab society, and in Jewish and Arab relations. We, at Givat Chaviva, have been doing this for 60 years and will continue doing it for another 60 years with your help. Join us by supporting our work.
My name's Doug Hoffman. I'm a member of Beth Emmet and also a member of the Advisory Council for the Jewish Studies Program in Champaign-Urbana. I first met Mohammed 4 years ago, but I met him in Champaign-Urbana. And he came to teach that time with Yossi Klein Halevi for about a week. And his program was so successful, the university invited him back very promptly. Could he come back and teach some more? And so he's been in Champaign-Urbana this whole semester teaching classes and reaching out to the community, this broader campus community, and the Jewish community in Champaign-Urbana. The program in Jewish Culture and Society in Champaign is helping to sponsor this event, and I'm very happy to introduce our friend Mohammed.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you, Rabbi, for hosting me in your community, and thank you, Doug, for making this, organizing this program. I'm going to talk about two main things. Basically, the rationale of why we do what we do at Givat Chaviva, especially at this time. A rationale that was correct in 1949 when Givat Chaviva was started. It was correct in 1963 when Givat Chaviva founded the Jewish Arab Center for Peace, a rationale that continues to be valid till today. And the rationale actually goes back to two sentences that exist in the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence spoke to my grandfather, who surrendered arms, surrendered the village of Iksal, where we live just outside Nazareth, on the 12th of July, 1948. And in the surrender agreement, actually, Chaim Laskov, who was the deputy chief of staff of the Israeli, of Tzahal at the time, they wrote in the contract that the Israeli military accepts the surrender of the village of Iksal based and promises to keep the promise in the Declaration of Independence. And the promise has two components in it. One, and I'm quoting from the Declaration of Independence, we call on the children of the Arab nation to stay and be part of the prosperity and development of the State of Israel. Now, this was not true for all cases. Many towns were pushed out, but some they were not pushed out, and they did negotiate an agreement, and that was the foundation of the staying, to be part of prosperity and development of the State of Israel. The Declaration of Independence goes further and sets the tone, sets actually the terms of you stay and be part of prosperity based on two additional conditions that the Declaration put to itself. The Founding Fathers promised political equality and social equality. They chose to distinguish between political equality and social equality. So when we speak today at Givat Chaviva about the concept of shared society, it's migrating from coexistence. We're not working just for coexistence. We're not only working for coexistence, we're working for shared society, which includes also work towards equality. Why are we not only working for coexistence? So Givat Chaviva used to work for coexistence pretty much until the year 2001, 2002. That was our strategy. The term coexistence basically reflects a theory behind it. The theory is called the social contact theory. Anyone here that studied social sciences probably got exposed to the social contact theory. What does the social contact theory assumes? It assumes that we as human beings just need to be engaged together in some kind of a social interaction. Social interaction reduces stereotypes and the result is humanization of each other. Everything will be okay afterwards. Mother and apple pie, kumbaya type of thing. All what we need to do is just be in the same room, ask how many children you have, how many children you have. My kids also like this show, they like that food. We all like this music. It's a humanization process, which Givat Haviva did for many, many years. Take kids and have them eat from the same plate, prepare the same hummus. Sometimes we ridicule this work and call it hummus coexistence. But they sleep in the same dormitory and they wake up in the morning and they have no new holes in their body. So that increases their sense of trust in the other. You can sleep in the same dormitory and feel safe. You go to the swimming pool and you're allowed to peek and see there's no horn hidden and there is no tail hidden. Why are we using those terms? Because part of the conflict and tension, political conflict and tension, results with a phenomenon which we call dehumanization. We attribute non-human characteristics to someone that we are afraid of or mistrust. Now, let's focus for a few minutes on fear and mistrust. In May 23, a year and a half ago, in our annual conference, we usually do a study. We have an index, which we call it the level of mistrust and fear between Jewish and Arab citizens of Israel. In May 23, the percentage of Israeli Jews that said they mistrust and are fearful of Arab citizens was about 32%. Today, in actually January this year, we did the same study following October 7th incidents. The 32% rose to 81%. Among Arab citizens, mistrust and fear was about 22%. Today, it's about 52%. So our problem, our subject matter has more than doubled and more than tripled. And the work of Givat Haviva is focusing on increasing trust and reduction of fear. So it's the exact opposite dynamics of the damage we're accumulating since October 7th. Despite the fact that those feelings are not actually substantiated with real actions on the ground. Everyone feared that Jewish-Arab relations in Israel will go through a major explosion after October 7th, similar to the May 21 events in mixed cities, with clashes between Jewish and Arab citizens, sometimes of the same neighborhoods, that especially and so it's not really substantiated fear and mistrust because there's no real incidents on the ground that will make you feel that we have to increase our sense of fear and mistrust of each other. On the contrary, October 7th was a real test to Jewish-Arab relations inside Israel. Everyone expected that we probably have 20,000 violent incidents between Jews and Arabs. As I said, similar dynamics to May 21 multiplied by 14 months. So instead of having the incidents run for 11 days, we could have had them run for 420 days or 40 days by now. And it's not happening. When the Israel Democracy Institute asked Arab citizens about their feelings towards October 7th, 88% said they object what Hamas did on October 7th. 3% supported, few do not have a position. To my taste, it's 3% too much that supported the actions, but they're not supporting it with any activity. They're supporting it maybe politically, consciously, justifying it one way or another, but 88% say they're objecting that. They say not in our name as Arabs, not in our name as Muslims, not in our name as Palestinians, not in our name as Israelis or humans. We cannot justify those kind of violent, savage type of actions, mainly against civilians. 71%, that's the Israel Democracy Institute did a study, that showed that 71% of Arab citizens say that October 7th strengthened their Israeliness. which is the exact opposite of what most Israeli Jews think has happened among Arab citizens. The feeling among the Israeli Jewish population was that October 7th might create some kind of empathy among the Arab citizens to the Palestinians, but actually the Arab citizens, 71% said it increases their sense of Israeliness. Now, Arab citizens in Israel have been traveling in two arenas. One, I call it Israelization, and one, Palestinization arenas. We're going through these two processes at parallel times at the same time. But this topic came to a significant debate during the Oslo agreements. We were talking about the Oslo period. During Oslo agreements, there were there was a power of the Oslo agreements, not just on the cross-border Israeli-Palestinian issue, but also in Jewish-Arab relations inside Israel. It happened during a period when two Arab political parties were supporting the Rabin government. It was called the Gush HaChosem, the preventive bloc. Rabin ruled with a minority government of 56 versus 59 from the right wing, and 5 Arab members of the Knesset from 2 parties gave him the support. I happened to work for one of those parties in the Knesset at that time. We refer to that period as the golden ages of Jewish-Arab relations. Why? Because it was the beginning of political participation of Arab parties in the decision-making apparatus inside Israel. When the term equality stopped just being equality on the social services, but also became equality in decision-making. That period also offered a very interesting challenge to the Arab citizens of Israel. In my undergraduate degree, I studied English literature and political science. And I think I learned more political science in English literature than in political science itself. One of my professors was Professor Alice Shalvi. She taught me Beowulf, among other things. And she used to come to me and hit me in the head, and she says, when you read the text, read the subtext. Read the hidden message. What did the author choose to omit? She called it the power of omission. So I read the Oslo agreements, 3,800 pages in Arabic, Hebrew, and English. Believe me, it's not the same. You find a lot of differences. But I was looking in the 72 different chapters. I was looking for the issues or the paragraphs and the sentences and the pages that relate to Arab citizens in Israel. Because in my political science studies, I learned that every time 2 nations come to an agreement, they talk about the minorities. So Germany negotiated the status of the Danes with Denmark when they drew the borders. They just negotiated the status of the Silesians, or Germans that live in Poland. Austria negotiated the status of the German-speaking minority in northern Italy. Napoleon, if you remember, negotiated the status, actually built Switzerland to give more power to the French minority in Switzerland. So the mother nation usually, when it comes to negotiate the final status agreement, puts the issue of their minority on the negotiations table. Now, more than 67% of Arab citizens define themselves as Palestinians. And it's increasing all the time. That definition started evolving pretty much in the 90s, when the term Palestinian stopped being seen as pure enemy to the state of Israel, because the Palestinians were in negotiations with Israel, in peace talks with Israel. So that legitimized the term Palestinian, and more Arab citizens started saying we're Palestinians. So that's the Palestinization process. It's not just political, it's also social, it's also economic, it's also cultural. And so you would expect that the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which was negotiating on behalf of the Palestinian people, they call themselves the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, will come and negotiate the status of the Palestinians in Israel. And actually, there was a delegation headed by Azmi Bshara, one of the Arab members of the Knesset from a party called Balad. They went to Arafat and asked him, please negotiate our status. We want the status of a national minority inside Israel. And he said, no. I'm not going to put your topic on the negotiations table. If anyone feels uncomfortable in Israel, you are welcome to come to move to Palestinian state. And when you ask this question to Arab citizens, would you move to live in a future Palestinian state? 93 to 97% say no. Ask them why. And they have two kinds of answers. One, we're home. We're in our homeland. We did not move to Israel. Israel moved to us. We didn't immigrate to Israel. Israel immigrated to us. We live in the same neighborhoods, the same places. I personally, every Friday after the Friday prayer in the mosque, go to visit the graveyard where my 26 ancestors are buried. I'm 27th generation in the same town. We've been living in the same town for 800 years. We're not lacking a sense of belonging. This is the same sunrise, the same sunset that my ancestors 800 years saw. And I inherited 64 olive trees that are 400 years old, planted by my ancestors. So the sense of belonging is pretty much complete. I don't need a national anthem. I don't need a flag to tell me that this is home, to tell me that this is the place I belong to. So the question is not, the question is not, are we in our homeland? The question is, are we in our country? And then I go back to the question, which Uzi Benjamin, an Israeli journalist, captured in a book. Whose state is it? Is it the state of the Jews, as the nation state law assumes, a law that was passed on the 19th of July, 2018? Is Israel the state of the Jews, which means the Israeli Jewish population, who are 79% of Israel, plus Jewish diaspora? Or is Israel the state of the Israelis, which will leave the Jewish diaspora out? That's a debate that has been on the table since the 1990s, since the Oslo agreements, including Israel also, that did not put the issue of the Arab citizens on the negotiations table. So if Arab citizens are going to be in Israel forever, which by the way, that wasn't the first time that this topic was discussed. It was also discussed in the 60s, when in 1963, the Israeli government lifted the military administration that was imposed on Arab citizens, and thinking that Israel might negotiate population exchange between Israel and Arab countries, meaning that Israel will take the Jews from Arab countries, get rid of the leftovers of the Palestinian people inside it. So Israel in 1963, the Knesset said, this option is not on the table anymore. Israel will forever have Arab citizens inside of it. So the question, how do you make this work? How do you make this work on those two axes? The vertical discourse, the political equality. Can we bring about political equality? If I'm going to stay Israeli forever, then how do I Israelize myself? But also, how do I Israelize Israel? Israel is going more into Judaization, more religious Zionist approach of Judaization, which shrinks its nature to certain Jewish values, not to inclusive Jewish values, that makes it less hospitable for non-Jews to feel that this is their country and this is their home. So in the vertical discourse, Rabbi, I'm not bringing you good news. We're going backwards. There's a feeling that we're going backwards, especially since 2009, since this kind of coalition started emerging, the one that is ruling today. They passed 28 discriminatory laws against Arab citizens. And there's a feeling that Israel is shrinking in its hospitable space to Arab citizens. The second term that the Declaration of Independence spoke about was social equality. Now let's expand social to also economic equality. Something dramatic happened in 2003 that many people probably paid attention to. It's a report by a government commission called the Orr Commission, commission headed by Supreme Court Justice Theodore Orr, that investigated clashes between the police and Arab citizens that left 13 Arab citizens killed. It was the second major demonstrations of Arab citizens. The first one was in Land Day, 30th of March, 1976, when Arab citizens demonstrated against the confiscation of their lands, also leading to 6 Arab citizens killed. But a few years down the road, in October 2000, 13 Arab citizens were killed in demonstrations that were parallel to the beginning of the Second Intifada, basically assuming or implementing the worst scenario you can anticipate. At time of war, Arab citizens will also revolt and create a situation that all Palestinians, all Arabs are united in a joint front. 11 days into the events, the Arab political leaders, together with Prime Minister Barak at the time, they meet in a town called Kfar Manda, by the way, next to where you were, next to Hanaton. They meet in Kfar Manda, and I would refer to it as they pulled the emergency brake. They basically said, let's create a firewall between the Arab citizens of Israel and their issues versus the issues of the rest of the Palestinians. That was a very important historic decision, which basically said that violence is not the way Arab citizens should engage when it comes to their relationship to the state. So yes, for demonstrations, but non-violent nature. That was a historic shift in approach. And despite the fact that the Intifada lasted for many, many months and became even much more violent, meaning also using firearms in nature, the Arab citizens managed to refrain from being involved, which describes pretty much what's happening since October 7th. There are, with time, Arab citizens did not only just look at October 7th and felt disgust of the actions of Hamas, they also looked at October 8th onwards and looked at disgust from what Israel is doing, and still not taking any physical action, mainly because of the term the day after. Everyone is talking about the day after. The day after for Arab citizens is different than the day after for the rest of the Palestinians. So it put some kind of, the Arab citizens have self-imposed a glass ceiling of Palestinization, meaning, yes, maybe we're the same people. But by the way, that's what Oslo said to Arab citizens. Maybe you thought you're part of the problem, but you're not part of the solution. Your topic is not on the negotiations table. You're not one of the 72 topics discussed in the Oslo negotiations. Your issues are to be resolved in the Knesset and within Israeli society. That's the Israelization process. That's the meaning of that's the omitted chapter in the Oslo agreements, but that's the message that the Arab citizens got from it. If we are not part of the cross-border conflict, then our issues are internal issues, and our day after in Israeli-Arab relations is different than the day after with the rest of the Palestinians. Now, as I said, politically we're going backwards since, but socially we're beginning to create many islands of success in 2 areas. One, in Jewish-Arab relations, and second, in capacity building of the Arab community. To fit yourself in Israeli society, you need to create capacity. You started seeing more Arab citizens studying the relevant subjects for the job market in Israeli society. The number 1 discovery was where? In the medical industry. Arab citizens do not serve in the military, so it means there are many jobs they cannot get. There are many places they cannot access. You cannot get a military career if you don't serve in the military. You do not get a police career. You can't work for government service, and many companies will not accept you. So all the brain power went to a place that the Arab citizens assumed the Jewish community needs: medical services. The result today is that 24% of the doctors in Israel are Arab, although Arab citizens are 17% of the population. Some say 21%, but that includes East Jerusalem. They're not citizens, they're only residents, similar to green card holders. So the actual percentage of Arab citizens is only 17%, but they constitute 24% of the doctors, 36% of the dentists, 44% of the nurses, and 55% of the pharmacists. What happened there? capacity building, but also what happened is the Israeli Jewish community created space. Please come in, we need you. In conflict resolution, the term that describes this phenomena is called the superordinate, sorry, the superordinate goal theory. What does the superordinate goal theory mean in simpler English? Mutual interests. Arab staff, medical staff, they need good jobs. The Jewish community needs the good services, and you create interdependency with this kind of situation. We relate to the medical industry as we refer to it as an island of success from which we're trying to learn. So one of the projects that you saw in the video is called Bara'im high-tech seeds. We know that the Israeli high-tech industry needs about 17,000 employees, new employees. There's a demand shortage of workers in the field of high-tech. The Israeli Jewish community is not able to supply it, thanks to the Haredim, who do not want to study math, so they cannot be relevant that much to the high-tech industry. So where can the supply be provided from? Can be provided from the Arab community. So what we do, we identify Arab kids who are very good in mathematics, already in 8th grade. From 9th grade, they start taking academic courses in computer science. Thank you. By the time they finish high school, they have 50% of their undergraduate degree in computer science. Israeli companies kidnap them. We try to get some to continue masters and PhDs, and many are continuing masters and PhDs. So we don't want just to supply low-level employees, but people that can also hit the higher echelon of the industry. And we managed in the last 7 years, to increase the percentage of Arab employees from 1% in the high-tech industry to 7%. The bigger number is the percentage of Arab students who are studying engineering in Israeli universities. It's 23% of the students of engineering in Israel today are Arab students. So that's a revolution in the making in the field of high-tech based on mutual interests. We're not talking about social contact theory. We're not talking about homeless coexistence. We're talking about good business. It will be good because you'll make 3 times the average wage if you're an Arab employee. And if you're a Jewish company, you will get local brain power, and that will not, that you can integrate. One of the companies I was part of creation about 14 years ago, I made a big mistake. I founded it as a non-for-profit company because it's making so much profit that we cannot cash it. But a company called Galil Software. And Galil Software looked at the problem of 6 Arab engineers that graduated from the Technion with honors, and not a single Israeli company would hire them. Although they need the brain power, but because they're Arabs, they said, maybe not today. Problem of mistrust and problem of fear. They don't want to introduce a strange Arab guy into the Jewish company that most of its workers were in the, they met in 8 to 100 unit in certain units in the military, and that's where they created their company. So the culture was a culture of friend that brings a friend in the high-tech industry, and all the friends were Jewish, so they only brought Jewish friends. So what Galil Software concept was, okay, let's compete for jobs. Let's create a company that will compete for jobs that the Israeli high-tech industry sends to China and India because of price. So clearly there's no secrecy there. Anything that goes to China stops becoming a secret. There's no sense of security there. There's no fear that something might leak out. It's just services, and they want them in cheap. I said, okay, we'll offer them cheap prices in Nazareth. That's, by the way, why we created it as non-for-profit, because we were afraid we'll have to dig in our pockets and pay the salaries. But we asked those 6 fresh graduates, hang in there. Let's prove to them that you're good enough to provide the services. The company today is 260 employees. That's not the real success. The real success is we lose about 1/3 of our staff every year to the mother companies. They give us the jobs. By the way, now we charge them 80% of Tel Aviv price, which is pretty much 3 times what India. They're happy to do it because the quality of the service is much higher. The supervision of the service is just 1 hour away. You don't need to catch a flight. You can come to Nazareth, eat good hummus, eat good knafe and baklava, and go back home to be with your family. And 1/3 of the employees are lost. So if Intel once gives a job to Galil Software, and they see that the performance is good, they want that employer in Kiryat Gat. They want that employer in Haifa. It creates the level, it increases the sense of trust and reduces the sense of fear and allows the integration of people, usually after 1 year or after 18 months of working with someone. The staff of the company says it's easier if you come instead of us keep sending supervisors to supervise you. So that kind of environment is evolving in the high-tech industry. By the way, those islands of success are developing in many other places. Look at universities. 21 years ago, in 2003, when the Or Commission report was published, the percentage of Arab students in Israeli universities was 3.5% only. Today, it's 20%. Now, how did this happen? We accompanied many campuses, many universities, and a number of things. One, a debate with the Board of Higher Education. How do you test students if they're good enough to go to university? You all had kids that, or grandkids that went to university. What's the exams that they take? SATs in America, right? In Israel, we have something called psychometric exam. Arab kids, the grade is out of 800. Here you have it out of 2,400. The grade is out of 800. Arab kids were scoring 150 points below the average of Jewish kids. And the university system was okay with it. They said, Arab kids are less smart, and that's why they score lower. And that's why they don't qualify to university. When we entered that situation, we analyzed the exam. We found 2 bugs in it. One, what we call culturally tilted. They ask about Shakespeare and they don't ask about Kulthum. Okay? So they ask about the type of music that is Western oriented and not Eastern oriented. But that's not the big thing. The big thing was the language of the exam. The exam was offered in Hebrew for all Israeli students. By the way, if you're American that wants to study in Israel, you can take it in English. If you're French, you can take it in French. If you're Spanish, you could take it in Spanish to enter an Israeli university because they want to examine you in your mother language. Except if you're Israeli, you have to take it in Hebrew. And we said, well, why are you offering it to Arab kids in Hebrew? Their mother language, the mother of instruction in Israeli Arab schools is Arabic. So offer them the exam in their Arabic, in their mother language, where they can perform better. The justification of the Board of Higher Education said, no, they are Israelis, they want to study in Hebrew, so we need to test their Hebrew level. My argument was, fine, have another exam in Hebrew. Let's separate testing intellectual capacity versus testing Hebrew quality. So we created a new test called Yael, Yidat Evrit L'Academia, Knowledge of Hebrew for Academia, and we offered the translation, the same questions, the same kids within the same time frame, in the same room, 1 Arab, 1 Jewish kid, each taking it in separate languages, the same supervisors, and guess what? The gap today is only 8 points instead of 150 points, which meant 23% more Arab students qualified to enter university. You didn't give them a discount. There was no discount given to them. It's the same exam. The only thing that it's now offered to them in Arabic language. I got involved in another thing with the universities. There was a problem also that Arab kids were scoring about 20% lower than the accumulated average of Israeli university students. at universities. And as a result, many were dropping out in the first year or getting a very low accumulated average at the end of their undergraduate degree, which does not qualify them to go for a master's degree and so on. And again, we discovered the problem. What's that problem? That if exams, especially when exams, and this is a rotation of once every 3 years, when exams fall during the month of Ramadan, and you take an exam after 1 o'clock in the afternoon when you're fasting, in average, you lose 20% of your grade. There was a direct link between your sugar level in the body and liquid level in your body and the end result in the exam. We were able to convince universities, and all universities in Israel today offer the exams during the month of Ramadan in the morning hours. Very simple fix. You'll see in the brochure, I use the term pieces of peace. We created the Jewish Arab Center for Peace. I stand corrected, it's pieces of peace. We try to create those small fixes that create more equal opportunities. Now, when we speak about, I said we don't use the term coexistence because coexistence can also be between unequals. You can have it at home, in a relationship between husband and wife, but you can also have it between a horse and a rider. You can have a beautiful relationship between a horse and a rider where they coexist very well with each other. And when they are, I used to be very good horse, good rider. And when my grandfather taught me to ride, he said, don't use force with the horse. Use your gentle force. So it can be also a hierarchic relationship as between a horse and a rider with very gentle force that might also not be seen. You can share sweat, you can drink from the same river, you can see the same view, you can enjoy time together. At the end of a joyful ride, what happens? One goes to the barn and eats hay, and one goes to the castle and eats a steak. And if you're French, it could be horse steak also. And that was my criticism. Actually, I wrote an article against the concept of coexistence in the year 2001. I almost got fired from Givat Haviva. And I said, I don't want to be the horse in any encounter between Jews and Arabs. I don't want to be the one that, if either we're two horses that are pulling the same wagon or two riders that are enjoying the ride together. But I don't want to always have this situation where Jewish and Arab youth or teachers or mayors come to Givat Haviva, they have tea or coffee and hummus and baklava and even gefilte fish, whatever. And then go home and reality didn't change. One goes to their privileged status and one goes to their underprivileged status. So what's the point of the encounter? The Jewish participants feel good that they were generous enough to step down a couple of steps, be at the same level with the Arab citizens, and then go back to their privileged status. So in the continuity of the article, I said, what we need is programs that promote equality and a chance to talk about the conflictual issues. We don't want just to come and meet and talk about what we agree on. We don't have just to be nice to each other. I mean, it's nice to be nice, but it's not, if we are going to engage in building a shared society, maybe we need to open the door, allow the elephant to the room, and talk about the conflictual issues. Usually when we talk about conflictual issues, there are two main conflictual issues. One, the question of whose state is it? Let's debate about this. Do I have an equal state as promised by the Declaration of Independence? Or am I subject to the nation state law that says Israel is not your state? Let's have a debate about this. It's called the narrative debate theory or identity debate theory. But if we avoid talking about the difficult questions, our encounters would give you a sense of being fake encounters. And what happens with fake encounters? They evaporate very quickly. But at the same time, this dialogue, we nicely call it dialogue, the narrative debate, we nicely call it dialogue. The dialogue is dangerous business because you know where you start, you never know where you end. There are two dynamics there. One is what we call the unpacking of the conflict, Let's start talking about the issue of equality or lack of equality. Why is it? Is it because the Arab citizens are lazy, or is it because there are laws that are discriminatory? Let's talk about these issues. And the other topic that comes into the dialogue usually, or the debate, is the cross-border Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It forces itself. You can never avoid having this discussion in a room. Some would even say, let's put it in the side. Even if you put it in the side, it's an elephant in the room. And it's better to deal with that elephant, even if you know that the result will be, let's agree to disagree. And I've been in thousands of those dialogues. In 99% of the cases, that was the result. Let's agree to disagree. We can't agree about today. What did Ben-Gvir say this morning? Probably something conflictual, something of provoking nature. Last week, he said that we should confiscate all the loudspeakers from the mosques. So that, the unpacking of the issue can be, why would he say such a thing? Some would say maybe they create too much noise. The counterback, this is the culture of the place before Ben-Gvir, before Israel, and you start backtracking. And this is the problem of who did what to whom when, who said what to whom when, all the way back to 1967, who started the war, 1948, was it Nakba, was it independence? And usually we keep going back, the backtracking, until we reach our father, Abraham. Who did he want to sacrifice? Probably Rabbi London can come here and prove that it was Isaac that Abraham wanted to sacrifice. I can prove that it was Ishmael. But that's the nature of, exactly. We'll have to agree to disagree, because I cannot convince you it was Ishmael, although I'm convinced with it. No one can convince me, and you cannot convince me it was Isaac. You can bring 1,001 proofs to your case. I can bring 1,001, maybe 2 proofs in my case. But that's the problem with narratives. It's very enriching. You get to learn a lot about the other, so it's important to do it, and that's why we do it at Givat Haviva. But it's, as I said, it is a dangerous business, because we've seen in bad meetings, we've seen in bad programs, kids saying, oh, I used to hate Arabs, now I know why.
He's an excellent speaker.
Jews, now I know why. So don't do it at any
there. Yeah.
This is not to be done at any expense. And one of my recommendations,
That's hot.
during the time I'm here in the US, I spoke at 22 different campuses. Is dialogue not at any expense? If dialogue is going to lead you to a place to say, now I understand why I hate the other, or highlight the differences, then you're not really being constructive. Which leads me to the third theory, which I mentioned already. We have the social contact, we have the narrative debate. Each has its problem. The social contact creates a fake equality that evaporates after you go home. When one goes to their privileged status, the other to their underprivileged status. The second is a narrative debate that has the danger. The third most dominant theory that we feel is most constructive is the mutual interests. It's the superordinate goal theory. And that's why most of the work of Givat Haviva is focusing on that. Among the projects we are involved in, increasing the percentage of Arab officers in the Israeli police, to change the culture of policing and change the nature of relationship between the police and Arab citizens. You want to see the result of the intervention? Look at the percentage of Arab officers in 2003 when the Or Commission report was published. Then it was 1% only. Today it's 12%. The number or the percentage of Arab employees in civil service, in government civil service. In 2003, it was 1.7%. Today, it's 13.2%. Is it equality? No, it's not equality, but the trajectory is very, very clear. So if you look at, I said in the political the horizontal discourse of equality, we're going backwards. On the social, economic, we're going really fast into creating a different kind of Israel, which I call the Israelization of the Jewish community also, not just the Israelization of the Arab community, which is basically becoming realistic, of having national institutions reflect the makeup of society, having the business community reflect the makeup of society. This is the concept of shared society and not just coexistence. Coexistence can accommodate inequality. Shared society has two components: good relations that need to be built and equality. When I wrote that article against coexistence, I introduced the term shared society. It was the first time it was introduced in the public sphere in Israel 23 years ago. And I said shared society, and every time few organizations, including Givat Haviva, we ask the question to Israeli Jewish and Israeli Arab public usually every once a year. Do you support the concept of shared society that includes good relations and equality? You'll be surprised by the results. 88% of Arab citizens say yes. 66% of Israeli Jewish citizens say yes, even in these days, even with high level of mistrust and high level of fear. 66% of the Israeli Jewish public is behind the concept. So it's not a lost case. Now, where's the problem? The problem is when you ask the second question. What do you think should happen in order to reach shared society? So most Jews say good relations first, and if that works, we will reward the Arab citizens with equality. You are more in the right wing. If they behave as we want them to behave, then we will reward them with equality. So they see the only dynamics for them is behavior, the good relations first. Most Arab citizens are in the exact opposite dynamics. They say equality first, fulfill the promise of the Declaration of Independence. Once you've proven your good intentions as Jews, we will reward you with good relations. That's where we're stuck. On what should come first. Each community, the end goal, we have really solid majorities behind it. And that people mean well. The Israeli Jewish and the Israeli Arab community, I think, mean very well. They want this to work, but they're conditioning the dynamics. I think we're the only organization. We're the only organization that says these are two parallel tracks. These are not conditional tracks. These are two parallel tracks. One feeds into the other. And I'll give you an example. One of the projects that I initiated in February 2005 came as, sometimes despair produces an opportunity. When you're frustrated from something, you try to look for something else. In the 90s, I was one of the people that founded the hand-in-hand schools. You probably heard of it. Basically, the concept which I still believe in, segregated educational system is the mother of all evil. And I still believe in it. So the idea was, let's create an alternative, mixed integrated schools. One of them, we have it also at Givat Haviva. But hand-in-hand was the first pioneer to do that. And I must admit, this is the best model. So it's not a surprise that we went and created the United School. The graduates of the mixed integrated system, they are better human beings, they're better citizens, they're more understanding not just of the cultural identity of the other, but also their own cultural identity, and they can create space for the presence of the meaningful other in their life forever. Now, the problem with the model is that the speed of making it the mainstream. So in 1997, we started the first school. By now, with all the different organizations active in this field, there's also a body called Tamar, and there's Givat Haviva. We have 9 mixed schools in Israel. So in 27 years, we created 9 mixed schools. Do the math, that's 1 new school every 3 years. How many schools do we have in Israel? 5,000. Do the math again, It'll take us 15,000 years to finish the job. Now, 15,000 years, maybe, I don't know how many of you want to live that long, but that's not social change. I mean, it's iconic, wonderful program, but it's not social change. That's not going to get us to the tectonic shift in society in feasible time. So I got frustrated from a model that I was part of creating. So what do? You ask the question, what's the second best? By the way, the mixed school system is based on the American old 1960s concept of the busing. The difference between the busing in America and the busing in Israel, the busing in America was a federal decision, top-down decision, which came with punishment and incentives. When the busing in Israel is private sector NGOs that are trying to do it without government support. So if there will be political change in Israel that will enforce that, then we can say, okay, this becomes more feasible and we will not need 15,000 years, maybe only 1,500 years. So what's the second best? The second best, my thought was, if we can't bus children, let's try to bus teachers. Let's start placing Arab teachers in Jewish schools and Jewish teachers in Arab schools. Now, everyone said this is not the same model. Yes, it's not the same model, but it is the presence of a meaningful other in your life. Usually, a teacher stays with you for 2-3 years and can create an impact. And in that model, you have the social contact. A kid will ask the teacher, where did you do your hair? Where did you buy this cloth? Why were you absent yesterday? Was it Yom Kippur or was it Eid al-Adha? Which holiday are you celebrating? You get to know the other. You become more familiar. You also get to talk about conflictual issues. What do you think about the war? What do you think about October 7th? What do you think about the Israeli government actions in Gaza today? You get to talk. Kids talk with their teachers. The good thing about that dialogue is that it's a hierarchic dialogue, so the teacher can end it whenever they want. And it does not slide into a debate. It does not, it's a contained environment where the dialogue does not become vicious, angry dialogue because of the hierarchy. And the third, it has the component in it. The third component is mutual interests. The teachers want the good salary and they want to succeed. The kids want the grade. So they create some level of interaction that is respectful and that has some kind of framework. I started with 6 teachers in 2005. Today we have 2,500 cross-sector teachers. That's 2,000 Arab teachers in Jewish schools and about 500 Jewish teachers in Arab schools. That covers 20% of the schools in Israeli Jewish education and 20% of the schools in the Arab education. For 93% of the kids, this is their first ever encounter with the other. For 68% of those kids, this changes their perspective about the culture of the other from negative to positive, which basically says the presence of a meaningful other in your life changes perspective to positive. And with this program, we're touching 400,000 kids a day. So it's not, and we're at about 1,150 schools. So that's a project which gives you magnitude. This project was facing severe challenges after October 7th, with high level of mistrust, high level of mutual fear. We were afraid that this program is going to go through some kind of meltdown, that we will lose almost half of the teachers in the process. So our intervention was, one, to work with the teachers, calm down, relax. They're not going to eat you alive if you go there, but also create a more hospitable environment for them. And we appointed a host teacher for each one of those call them guest teachers. We have a host teacher that became responsible for their well-being, trust building. They'll meet them at the entrance of the school, or maybe even at the entrance of the village, and drive them through, in and out. We talked to the principals, we talked to the mayors, we had sessions in the teachers' lounges, worked with the kids, diffused the tension, de-escalated the tension in order to create an environment for the teachers so that they can come back. We lost few, 6 out of 2,500. but 2,494 are still today, as we speak. They showed up this morning and they continue to do the work. That shows the resilience of certain programs if they are done correctly. The same thing also is true for the 24% of the doctors that showed up to their shifts this morning, 50% of the truck drivers who are Arab that showed up to their shifts this morning, the taxi drivers, the bus drivers, people that see that working together, studying together is the way to do it. Now, this is not happening in sterile environment. This is happening in an environment in which Arab citizens are torn between two dynamics. One coming from extreme radical Palestinian groups like Hamas, calling on Arab citizens every single day since October 7th, go to your kitchen, get a knife, stab the first Jew that you meet. How many people listened to this invitation? Till now, 21. 21 incidents in the last 14 months. We would be expecting 21,000. So luckily it's contained, it's individual incidents of people going south in their minds, but it's not organized activities. It's not cells of political ideological groups that are going into this process. All the leadership is denouncing those actions and trying to prevent these dynamics from developing. The second pressure is coming from some components in this right-wing government that are trying to deepen discrimination and delegitimization of Arab citizens. You see it, I just mentioned the example of Ben Gvir trying to incite against, actually trigger even confrontations between his arm, his militarized arm, which is the segments in the Israeli police, not all the Israeli police, that's trying to use them to confront with Arab citizens. You know, when you send a command to go confiscate loudspeakers, the worshippers are not going to allow you to confiscate the loudspeaker. And this becoming confrontation, people might get arrested, injured, hurt, they might hurt an officer. He made already more than 1,200 arrests of Arab students that were, in most cases, fabricated allegations against them. Only 30 were found that have did something or said something which is worth pursuing legally. But if it's only 30, why did you arrest the other 1,170? It is provocation. It is trying to stir more anger and frustration among Arab citizens that might result with confrontations, because he will thrive on this politically. For him to increase the sense of animosity and the sense of fear among Jews, this will increase the potential voters for the religious national Zionism movement. And so the Jewish-Arab relations are challenged every single day by these two dynamics, one from the radical Hamas, one from the radical right-wing Israeli politicians. And, you know, we have lots of wood down here, touch wood. We're managing to maintain the relationships functioning mainly because of the success of the resilience of those islands of success, whether in education, whether in the medical industry, whether in civil service, whether in academia. People are refusing to get dragged into this. I mentioned earlier the term the day after. Hopefully the day after for the Israeli relations with the Palestinians, although it seems far today, hopefully it will be in a politically negotiated two-state solution. I'm hoping, I've been holding this perspective since the 90s. I haven't seen anyone suggesting any better resolution. If someone suggests a better resolution, I'm happy to sign on it. But to end the conflict, end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it's more of negotiations of a divorce agreement. You know, you split the house, you have clarity of borders, where one state starts, where the other ends, security arrangements, economic arrangements, environmental arrangements, 72 topics. we know needs to be negotiated. But it's about separation. It's about splitting the house and keeping many doors open between in that house. It's like in a bad divorce, but with many children. So you need a lot of doors that the children can go through. People that want to go to worship, people that might want to go to work, people that might just visit the family, security, environment, and so on and so on. On the issue of Jewish-Arab relations in Israel, it's more like negotiating a marriage. We are in the same dormitories at universities. We're in the same classrooms at universities. We're in the same shopping malls. We're in the same buses. How do you make this work? And it has to come one with goodwill. Marriage has to come with goodwill. In personal relationships, we call it love, right? But at least in collective relations, it has to come with goodwill. We need to plant goodwill in people's hearts and minds. To plant goodwill, you need personal interaction. You need to humanize each other. If we keep just thinking of the other through the lens of the enemy, the national discourse, or through the ethnic discourse, or through the political discourse, or through the security discourse, you're not going to create that goodwill. You need to create it as my fellow worker, my fellow artist. One of the projects at Givat Haviva, by the way, actually two projects. One, we can bring it to here in September if you want. We have a project called Through Others' Eyes. We bring Jewish and Arab high school kids to jointly study photography. Every Thursday afternoon, 4 o'clock until 8 o'clock in the evening, they come to study photography. The first half of the year, they study the skill of photography. You know, how to use the lens, how to take the angle, how to develop the paper. The second half of the year, they start their project. What is their project? To document the other. The Jewish kids have to document the life of an Arab kid, and Arab kids have to document the life of a Jewish kid. And they go to each other's homes, and to each other's towns, and they get to learn about the other. And every picture becomes a story. We found a fascinating trend, by the way. Most Jewish kids that have never been in Arab towns, when they come, the pictures that they take, it's usually outside the house. They're fascinated by the outside environment of the Arab towns and villages. You know, you have chickens still outside the house. You have a lamb. You have an old man sitting and smoking nargila. So they take most of their photos about outside the house. Arab kids who get more chance to go to Jewish towns, when they go to to see their Jewish kid, they're not interested in the square buildings. They don't have that many chicken running around in the cities. So what they look for, they open the closets and they take a photo of inside the closet. They open the fridge, they take a photo inside the fridge. They go to see what were they cooking, they open the pot and they look into the pot. It's very different dynamics, but this is a way people get to learn about each other. They get to learn about the habits. You know, and they talk about, okay, you opened the pot and you saw what they were cooking. What were was the smell different? What spices did they use? This is how you become much more familiar with other. As I said, this project is coming for traveling in the US in September next year. Another project in the field of art, also a project that we started 2 years ago. We're trying to imitate the interdependency in the high-tech and the medical industries. We're trying to bring that same dynamics into the art industry. So with time, Givat Haviva is not just working with kids, we're beginning to work more with mature populations. You know, people in their 20s, people in their 30s, where the return is much faster. And to work with kids until you see the impact and the return from them, usually it's 15, 20 years down the road. So with artists, what we started doing 2 years ago, and now we're recruiting the third cohort, we bring 6 fresh graduates, 6 Jewish fresh graduates from art schools, and 6 Arab. We give them space like this one, pretty much the same size, and each will get their corner and spend a joint residency at Givat Haviva on campus for 3.5 months, sleeping in the same dormitories on campus, eating from the same plate, but when they're working together to create their first portfolio, they're consulting with each other. We bring them Jewish and Arab mature artists that give them lectures and advice. We try to basically put them on track of successful artists together. Their final project is a joint exhibition, which also is coming to the US, by the way, in October. 6 of 3 Arab and 3 Jewish artists were selected to do a further residency at Duke University Art Center, Art Institute. And it's going to happen over the next 3 years. That's agreement with Duke University. But the idea behind this project that over the next 10 years, we want to work with 400 to 500 artists that have worked together, that have worked in the same space, slept in the same dormitories, created this friendship, personal relationships and friendships, and created art together and exhibited together. This kind of dynamics, we feel, will affect the art industry significantly. And once every few years, we take one more component in Israeli society. We identify a problem and we engage in offering a solution. But one thing we also learned is that you can't do this successfully. You cannot scale this without engaging the proper government agencies. We're not always successful because sometimes you get political leadership that is not willing to cooperate. But with the educational program, the cross-sector teachers program, actually the person, he does deserve the credit. The person that gave us the kosher stamping when he was Minister of Education was Gideon Saar, who's currently the Minister of Foreign Affairs. He was Minister of Education then. He said, this is a wonderful program. What do you need? I said, salaries for the teachers, which is 94% of the cost. 6% is recruiting, training, curricular development, evaluation, which is what we do. But the rest is salaries. And the government is picking 2,500 salaries a month. That's scaling. That's how you can really grow a program, because when I ask for donations, if I ask you for salaries, for 2,500 salaries a month, at some point you'll say enough. And that's why we need to institutionalize it in a way that it is a sustainable project without philanthropy. Philanthropy actually seeds the ideas and maybe provide some enveloping services, but not run programs that government should take over. Another very successful area, and I will stop with this and maybe open it for some questions. In 2007, I was in a panel for a newspaper called Globes in Israel. It's our version of the Financial Times. And next to me sat Amir Halevi, who was the head of the budgeting department at the Ministry of Finance. And he said, there are 2 problems in the Israeli employment section that are unsolvable. One, Haredi men that do not want to work, and Arab women that their husbands do not want them to go to work. Now, I was on the table, so I said, wait, I'm a husband, I want my woman to work. And I have 3 daughters. I also want them in the future to work. I don't know where you got this idea that all Arab men do not want their women to go to work. He said, that's our research. I said, okay, let's do research together. Who opposes Arab women going to work? So we did a study in the Arab community, and we found a couple of interesting, let's call them preventive or obstacles in front of Arab women. One, the mothers-in-law. Why would they object? Because there was no daycare. And if a woman goes to work, the kids will be with the mother-in-law. So it was not the men, it was the mothers-in-law. The problem is lack of infrastructure of daycare. Second, where are the workplaces? The Arab community, which was severely below poverty line, at the time it was 67% of Arab citizens were below poverty line. The Arab community was creating only 11% of the jobs. So where are the rest of the jobs? It's supposed to be in the Jewish community. To go to work in the Jewish community, what do you need? First of all, public transportation. Public transportation was offered only between Arab towns and Arab towns. not Arab towns and Jewish towns. It was mostly culturally based public transportation, not economically based public transportation. So we said, start offering bus lines between Carmiel and nearby Bani, which is only, 10 minutes away. Not just between Bani and Nazareth, where and then you drop a person about 7 miles away from work, and then to get to work, it becomes a 2-hour ordeal if you don't have a car, especially if people below poverty line do not have cars. So we asked for a solution for the public transportation. We asked for a solution for daycare. Luckily, 2011 came, and then the Trachtenberg Committee issued vouchers for women that go to work. They can get vouchers for daycare for their kids. And suddenly, it was the government policy of how do you subsidize daycare was based on the jobs. If women that have a job, the government has to offer them daycare. But those two changes created a dramatic shift. And then the question, okay, if that Arab woman needs to work in a Jewish community, what does she need? She needs, first of all, Hebrew. She needs some soft skills to be able to talk to, to go to pass an interview, maybe one with her mother-in-law and her kids, but also at the job. And she needs some basic computer skills. Because if you look for a job in your own small town, how do you do it? You ask around, you knock on doors. If you need to work in a neighboring town, you need to print your CV. So you need Word and computer. You need to email it. So you need Outlook. You need to Google. You need some basic skills in computer so that you can look for a job outside your community, because you're not going to run to every factory and knock on doors. So with those skills, we ran a project with 950 women that the government labeled as chronically unemployable. Now, what's chronically unemployable? That was where Amir Halevi was stuck. The chronically unemployable group was women above the age of 25, never worked before in their life, no university degree, and have children. So the government said, if you have these four characteristics, we gave up on you. So I said, all right, I'm going to work with the chronically unemployable. And we managed, after, to be exact, 256 hours of training, plus appointing a placement advisor, to find jobs, successful placements for 720 out of 950. What's successful placement? Staying in the same job for more than 6 months. So if you stayed for 5 months, we didn't even count you. We went back to the government, to Amir Halevi, with this data, and we said, here's a pill against mentality. You think it's mentality of the Arab community? Here's a pill against mentality. 256 training hours plus an advisor on placement. That's how you get 75% success rate among the most difficult group. His answer was, wonderful, keep up the good work. I said, no, it's wonderful, it's your work today. We're closing the project. No, you won't do it because it's a successful project. How would you explain that to your donors, to your friends, to your beneficiaries? He didn't believe me. Next week, he was CC'd on the letters when we fired the staff of the program. He was CC'd in all the letters, announcing that we're closing the project within 30 days. We gave basically notice to all the staff in the program. We were active in 6 towns. He calls and he says, are you crazy? I said, yes, I am crazy. He said, but your beneficiaries are the women and you're damaging their chance to get a job. I said, they're your beneficiaries too. They're your responsibility. And actually, you're the only one making money out of it. Because those women stop being welfare recipients and they become taxpayers. You have a vested interest in this. We ended up, after negotiating for about 3 weeks, getting 15 million shekels a year for the program, which scaled this project from 6 towns to 60 Arab towns, which produces about 3,000 new Arab women in the job market every year, increasing the percentage of Arab women that worked from 17% in 2007 to 46% of Arab women working today. That's almost 30% of the Arab households that started having a second income in the home economy, which reduced poverty rate among Arab citizens from 67% to 45% today. So that's where we use the term pieces of peace. We're not going to bring about Middle East peace, but we're going to create more and more of those islands of success, of interaction, some of it with government, some of it with social entrepreneurs, social activities, academia, high tech. And I think that Jews, and I think Jews and Arabs, if taught to live together, they know how to sustain living together. Thank you very much.
So we have a little time for questions before Beit Sefer ends and the stampede will go out.
Hi, Jill Bishop. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate hearing about everything that you're doing. A friend of mine in Israel told me a story last week. Her husband is an HR manager at a bus factory, and it's a mixed workforce. And a year or so ago, maybe a few years ago, some of the employees came to him and said that one of the Arab employees, his wife was having fertility problems and can't afford the treatments. And would the company be willing to donate? And the management talked and said, for every shekel that's raised among you, we'll match a shekel. And then the next year at the company holiday party at a hotel where all of the families come together and swim together, eat together, celebrate together, my friend and her husband met the employee and his wife and their newborn baby. And you hear about these stories that are so heartwarming, and you hear about all of these wonderful programs that you're doing, and nobody knows about them. And you hear about Israel being an apartheid society, and that's the narrative. And what can be done to help elevate all of these successes and change some of the narrative outside of Israel, so that this is what people think of, at least in part, instead of this immediate gut reaction that is now the prevailing narrative that Israel is just an apartheid.
Well, I'm not in I'm not in diaspora, so I don't know how to communicate this to the international media arena and create an international public opinion. That's the job probably of the government, and maybe yes, it is an interest maybe to the Jewish community in the diaspora, because this also affects you, and because it becomes anti-Semitism at some point. I know how to do the work on the ground, and when people like Doug invite me to speak, I know how to communicate this, and I know how to bring this, but I also know how to be honest and tell you about the half empty and the half full, about the political retreat in status as a result of right-wing governments seizing the agenda, and the accumulated successes on the horizontal issue. I think that when Smotrich, the Minister of Finance, came up with this idea that he wants to separate the maternity rooms in hospitals, he said that he's going to condition budget to the hospitals only if they accept his conditioning of separating Arab women from Jewish women with their babies in hospitals. And he went with justifications and all kinds of stuff that smell very racist. It didn't take the international community and the public opinion to criticize him to change his opinion. What forced him to change his opinion was that Jewish and Arab doctors, I would say 99% of them said, not in our watch, not as long as we're hospitals, as we're doctors in these hospitals. You can do that, but you will not have doctors. You need to find your own doctors. Bring your own religious Zionism group to become the doctors. Train them to become the doctors, if that's the ideology you want to impose on the medical industry. And he had to retreat, and he had to stop. if those concept, if communicating the success of Jewish-Arab relations on the, let's call it the social arena, helps Israel, why not? I'm personally happy to communicate. Me and my team and my staff, we're happy to communicate all the time this work. Our main mission is to do the work and not to communicate it. Our main mission is, we have 300 Jewish and Arab kids that come to our campus every week. We expect this is going to increase the day after. And that's why we're training more facilitators, because we know that after tension, after a period of tension, when things start calming down and there's a feeling that we're getting to some kind of calming down, there will be higher demand on our programming. And we need to be there to supply that kind of demand. So instead of training 24 facilitators every year, this year we're training 75 facilitators of encounters. So we're willing and happy to partner with any organization that wants to listen and hear, not just to Jewish audiences, but also to non-Jewish audiences. We're not always received well because we're seen as if we're trying to beautify Israel's image. When I spoke in Champaign-Urbana, I was called names by some radical Palestinian attendees, and they called this collaboration with colonialism. And I asked the question, and for them they want BDS. We're doing the exact opposite dynamics. I want more Arab students in Israeli universities and not to boycott Israeli universities. I want more Arab professors in Israeli universities and not to boycott Israeli universities. Our day after is marriage and not divorce. And as such, we're in complete opposite dynamics. And I think that in some place, there's some kind of envy among some of the radical groups, radical pro-Arab or pro-Palestinian groups. There's some kind of envy to Arab citizens. And that's why we even get more attack, up to being even called traitors for engaging into the Israelization process. But at the end of the day, I think that the best export Israel can send to the Arab world is a successful story of Jewish-Arab partnership that says that Jews and Arabs are not destined to fight. They can live together. They can find means and mechanisms to live together. I think, yes, this does serve Israel's diplomatic status, public relations, but in order to do that, you need to create successful programs on the ground. If you come and say today that Arab citizens are only 12% of the police force, people might criticize that. If you say it's the trajectory is, the growth from 1% to 12%, and with maybe putting a goal to reach the proportional rate in society, then things might work. I think the biggest problem today is that this government doesn't really care. Not about its public image, and definitely not about successful integration of Arab citizens in Israel. It's happening despite certain legislations that they've taken, 28 laws since 2009, since the, let's call it by name, the Netanyahu governments have been in place.
So one of the things that you were talking about is that, both within Arab society and within Jewish society, the radical fringes are the dominant voices. I think this is a little bit what Jill was talking about, that we hear today. They're also the ones who have the most political power. So even though you're talking about the majority of society and all the statistics you quoted are for the work that you are doing, that's not where the political power is today. So perhaps you could speak about, what you think the trajectory moving forward is, given the fact that the political power is not for the shared society work that you're doing.
I'm fearful. I'm scared that the dynamics of the political dynamics might shift directions. And right now we still have a Supreme Court that sometimes pulls the emergency brake. We might not have the proper, we might not have it in a few years with the legislation that is coming from the extreme right in Israel. Not necessarily just the extreme right and the center right that is dependent on with them on the coalition. So the political dynamics can go into a completely different direction. And that's why I think that there needs to be better political representation of that majority, that 68%. They need to create better representation. Again, I'm not the politician to suggest that. The only thing I can speak about here is that get out the vote. People that believe in and that have goodwill should not stay at home. They need to go vote. And the turnout rate among Arab citizens in the last elections was 54%. In the 1999 elections, it was 78%. So where is the 25%? 25%, that's 6 seats in the Knesset. The same thing with political coordination between Labor and Meretz, for example. That was another loss of 3.5 seats in the previous elections. So I don't think the problem is having majority, the problem of having majority that turns out to vote. I do still believe that Israeli Jewish society and Israeli Arab society have the majority of goodwill in both the cross-border aspect and the internal dynamics of shared society in Israel. But it's not translating that into electoral means that can also become the governing body of the state of Israel.
So we just have a few more minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to allow you to have quick questions, no comments, just a question, and then we'll do those 3, and then we'll have Mohammad finish up here.
Hello. My name is Carla, and I have 12 questions, but I'm going to ask you one that goes way back to the beginning of your talk, and it has to do with high school kids. Now, around here.
No, we're just making a question.
Yeah, I am. That, okay. There's a variety of kids, and when you put kids together from different cultures, religions, and whatever, there's bound to have love spring up. Has that been an issue? That's a social issue and may not be serious to you, but it may be serious for parents. And I'd like to know if your program deals with that.
We're doing all the questions.
Oh, well, mine is, if a miracle occurs and there's a successful two-state solution, what would the Arab Israelis choose to do? Stay or move to the new state?
Thank you. So all of the names Trump has floated so far, optimistic about United States policy with regard to the kind of advancements that you would like to see and I would like to see. Is there any name that's been floated that gives you any sense of optimism about what United States policy will be?
Okay.
Thank you so much for your talk. I have a quick question. So what would be an ideal state solution of Israel that you understand? Many countries went through it. In Europe, it was secularization that solved a lot of these issues, but is it even possible in the case of Israel?
Thank you.
Thank you for very good questions. We've been in this business for 75 years. I do not recall a couple emerging from our encounters. For basic reason, most of our work is with kids, and when they're 14, 15, they might have an emotional relationship for a few minutes, but then they go home. And they go home to their separate residential reality. Jewish kids go to their Jewish towns, Arab kids go to the Arab towns. 92% of Jews and Arabs live in separate towns and villages. And then the Jewish kids go to the military, and we're not in it for that kind of emotional situation. We're in it for more intellectual kind of exploration and not to create, maybe empathy, yes, but we're not in the love business. By the way, when you look at mixed marriages between Jews and Arabs, I would say it's probably 1 in 10,000, and mostly with people that are in the media. It's mostly media people and not in other industries. I don't know why, but journalists tend to be the ones that go into that direction. If a Palestinian state, hopefully when a Palestinian state will be created, I think I mentioned it, 93 to 97% will prefer to stay in their homes, realizing that that will be the state of Israel. And I call it the Oslo syndrome for Arab citizens. Make a choice, and the choice between 93 to 97% is to stay home, and equip yourself with the tools to stay home. Improve your education, so improve your capacity to engage in Israeli society. And I say to my kids, when you go to an interview for a job, you need to be better than any Jewish average candidate, and not as good as they are, but better, which means you need to bring better academic qualifications. You need to work harder on the job so that your ethnic cultural identity is not what you're judged by. You're judged by the skills that you bring to the workplace. And I think the rise in academia from 3.5% to 20% is a proof for that. But I think also you can see an indication that of the Israelization mindset happening also in the change of the status of Arab women. If you look at the 20% who are Arab students in Israeli universities, 70% of them are female students, which is the highest proportion in the whole Arab world of female students among the university students. It's the highest, which is part of the Israelization process. That means that you also need to have a second income in a household. Which means send your daughters also to school so that they can get income, they can get dignity by their academic performance and job, and not just by their family lineage and affiliation. So I'm not concerned about what people want. I mean, I don't have questions about what people want. I'm concerned about the speed of capacity, but also the government support for that. As these phenomena are developing positively, you see negative phenomena developing. For example, the high crime rate within the Arab community, most of it resulting from negligence, police negligence. The police does not do any real policing, domestic policing in Arab towns and villages, which, by the way, is leading more and more Arab citizens to even leave their towns and live in neighboring Jewish towns, which is a phenomena that has developed also in the last 10, 15 years. It started by lack of permits to build houses. So either you build an illegal house and it gets demolished, or you move to live in a neighboring Jewish town. And that's a new phenomenon. But I think we're moving into the direction of equal integration, de facto, maybe not de jure. Maybe the legal system is going to be behind for maybe 1 or 2 generations. But de facto, things are happening on the ground. Now, regarding your question, I don't have an answer. I've been watching U.S. politics over the last few months. I feel lucky to have been during elections, surprised with the results, as maybe some of you. I don't know what to expect from the new government in the U.S. and how it's going to relate to the Middle East. I have no clue. If you have a clue, tell me. Regarding your question, Israel is not the first nation state in the world. Jews did not invent nation states. It was Benedict, a philosopher, that wrote the first article about nation states in 1847, and he did not mean it for the Jews. It was not the beginning of Zionism. Was not the first nation national ethnic grouping. And you're right, nation states corrected course. They corrected course by introducing democracy. They corrected course in their relationship with minorities. So if you go to Europe today, they have nation states recognize 23 national minorities, which means that they give collective rights to those national minorities, respecting their uniqueness and protecting their uniqueness, that they don't have to melt into society. And which is the case for Arab citizens in Israel. It's impossible for Arab citizens to melt in Israeli society because we're Muslims, Christians, and Druze, and we're not going to become Jewish in order to enter university. People are not going to sell out their identity for the sake of a certain kind of benefits, social benefits in society. So I think that learning from the European model, ultimately I believe that Israel can learn from that model and package collective rights that will allow Arab citizens to accept, one, the collective rights of the Jews when having their own collective rights. And by the way, this is not new in Israeli society. I think the framing will be new, but Arab citizens already have a number of collective rights. One of them I already mentioned and bashed, which is the separate educational system, which I think is bad for the Arab citizens to start with, but it is given as a right to have separate educational system that teaches in Arabic language until the nation state law in 2018 was an official language. Now it's downgraded. It's not an official language anymore. Exemption from military service, that's another collective right provided. Separate family law system. It's a department in the Ministry of Justice, but I got married and my kids are being married based on Sharia court, Muslim religious system, the same thing that handles divorce, the same thing that handles inheritance. It goes by the religious identity. Now, what's missing is the packaging of maybe these 4 components and maybe adding 1 or more components. One component that is always in the news or it's always a topic that is present is the flag and the national anthem. The flag is just a Jewish symbol. Should it be an inclusive symbol? Should we add an olive branch on it or a fig leaf on it or maybe an indigenous bird or a certain stone, or to say we added 1 more component so that when an Arab citizen looks at the flag, they see themselves. Now, this is not something that can be imposed on Israeli Jewish society. That's something that needs to be done with an open heart. Because if you come to the Israeli Jewish society and say, I'm going to change your flag and national anthem, the response will be, go to hell. We're not going to include you. But if it comes from the perspective that we matured as Israeli society and we want to create more welcoming space, so we added this flower for the non-Jewish citizens. So when then they look at it, they see themselves. Don't take out, the 2 blue stripes and Magen David. Don't take out anything from it. Just add, not deduct. Because if you speak about eliminating the flag, I think that that'll generate negative response from the Jewish community. It needs to be creating space, like the national anthem. I don't have a Jewish soul to connect with it. The question, will you offer me an alternative word so that when you sing about the Jewish soul, I can sing about the soul of a bird that I connect with, the soul of the horse that I love. Add something which is neutral that can be of inclusive nature. Now, there's certain things that maybe I can expect and hope for as a minority, but I cannot demand. Because if I demand them, it's seen as a challenge to the Jewish identity of the state. And I don't think it's right to challenge the Jewish identity of the state. I think Israel needs to mature to become not an either or, not the state of its citizens versus the state of the state of the Jewish people versus its citizens. It has to be the state of its citizens and the state of the Jewish people at the same time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone who came in, for Mohammad, for just an inspiring and uplifting and informative talk. We really appreciate your being with us today, and most importantly, the amazing work that you are doing in Israel. And we just hope that you have many more people who are working with you on this, because clearly you can't do all of this alone. But thank you so much.